Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. It is time for my November wrap up. I'm going to try to keep things concise, not one of my strengths, I will admit, and I'm going to run through some very short stats, and then I'm going to quickly, fingers crossed, run through the books that I read in November. So might as well just dive right in. Let's get started. So I, in November, read a total of 11 books. Oh, so I did actually forget to mention one of the books in my October wrap-up, which was Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert. It's a novella. It's a paranormal romance. It is shifters. It is wonderful. I rated it 5 stars. It was great. I don't know how. I don't know how I missed it in October. So I actually read this book as a buddy read with Nicole from See Nicole Read. So I will leave a link up in the cards and down in the description for our discussion on Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert. Back to November. Back to December? Back to November. Not a Taylor Swift song. So in November, I read 11 books, which was, well, I finished 11 books, and that was a total of 4,308 pages, which is pretty good. Altogether, there were 2 male authors. I read 2 books by TJ Klune this month, so there was 3 books. And so there was 9 female authors. And there were 2 POC appearing authors and 9 white appearing authors. And then the division of all of the genres is 6 paranormal romance, which is not a surprise because I was participating in both. Well, I didn't really participate in the paranormal romance readathon, but I was a host for the Love in the Night readathon, and I vlogged my experience, so I'll put that up in the cards and down in the description, so you should check it out. But yeah, so I read 6 paranormal romance, and then 1 historical romance, 1 adult fantasy, 1 YA fantasy, 1 cozy mystery, and 1 literary fiction book. So I always tend to run through these books in the order in which I read them. Some people like tier rank them. Other people put them in the order of their ranking of like by stars. So if you think there's another way that I should do this for the future or for December, put that down in the comments because I would love to hear. Because this is like how I organize my life, but like maybe it'd be more interesting in a different way. Anyway, so I finished. The first book that I finished in November was The Dragon Reborn by, yeah, it's right down here, but it's stuck in a box set, so I can't pull it out. Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. This is the 3rd book in the Wheel of Time series. I'm doing a big long read along of the whole series. Quite the commitment, but I have a Discord group that we're all kind of participating together and chatting, and it's great, and I feel like I have a lot of support. I read probably 2/3 of this in like October and September, but then I kind of pushed through and finished the last big chunk, and we had a discussion the 1st or 2nd of November. So technically I finished that in November. And I gave The Dragon Reborn 4.5 stars. It definitely had some more action than some of the other books. It started off with kind of all of our characters in separate locations, and then by the end of the book, everyone had been, or most people had like managed to like work their way out to one location. So it was really nice to like see those threads all coming together, and there was like a big climax. And some of the other books have like a ton of climax and action like right in the last like literally 30 pages out of like a 600 plus page book, and this one had, I think, a little bit better in that it lasted more like a last 100 pages, so I really enjoyed The Dragon Reborn. The second book that I finished in November was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. This is the first book in the Bridgerton series, and I kind of jumped on board because the show's coming out and I was hearing so much buzz about it. It is a historical romance series. This is the first book, and I wanted to join that hype train. So I got this on audiobook and started to listen to it, and I was like, it was fine. It was like I was chugging along. It was good. I didn't think it was like really standing out nor bad. I wasn't really connecting with Simon as our male lead, but you know, whatever. It was chugging along, and then I was warned that there was like problematic content / a questionable dubious consent scene, and so I kept waiting for that to happen. And it really kind of, I think, maybe put me a little bit in a different mindset because I was kind of over analyzing what the characters were doing, and I'd already gone into the start of the scene, capital T, capital S, feeling like our main female character Daphne was like already really manipulative, and so she the problematic scene, you can like read and hear a lot about it, but to me, in my opinion, it was a rape. I have seen other people's content where they say that it's not, and like that's fine, but like to me, that brought the whole book down. I didn't feel like I thought it was, I just didn't feel like there was enough that had been, it didn't get talked out or resolved in text to my satisfaction. So yeah, so that to me kind of brought down the whole rating, and I ultimately only gave it a 2-star. And I do still want to see this show. I'm not sure that they're going to put that scene in the show because I feel like it's controversial that people are talking about it. So yeah, moving on. The next couple books that I read were all part of my Love in the Night readathon, which I was a co-host for. It was a really great time. I was so glad that Shay came up with that readathon, and I was so happy to participate. Like I said, I'll leave my vlog up in the cards and down in the description. You should definitely go check out some of our like live shows. We had a grand old time that whole second week of November. So I did talk about a lot of those, all the books that I read in that vlog and in my videos for Love in the Night, so I'll be kind of quick. So I read The Tenant by Katrina Jackson. This is a novella. It is paranormal story. It has to do with ghosts. We follow a guy named Noel, and he like has just inherited this really, really old house, and he goes there and he's like, yeah, this is haunted. And yes, it is, because that is our heroine is the ghost who haunts this house, and her name is Ruby. So overall, I thought this was like a perfectly fine novella. It was definitely more like erotic than romance. Like I just didn't feel like there was like a romance between the two characters. I thought it was good and interesting, and I really liked the amount of like history that got packed in to explain history, to explain Ruby's history and how she came to haunt this house, and like her history with Noel's ancestors. So yeah, I enjoyed this, and I was glad that I read this. I don't think I'd ever read any like ghost story other than the Mediator series, which is like not really a romance. But yeah, so I ultimately gave The Tenant 2.5 stars. I then read I read Barista and the Bear by Rebel Carter. This was our group book for Love in the Night readathon. It is the first book in the Oak Fast Fated Mates series. It's a novella, and it is a bear shifter, and then he kind of like finds his like fated mate. Teresa is our heroine, and it was really cute. It was quick, it was fluffy, it was fun, it was funny. There's like magic and witches and shifters and fairies and a bunch of other paranormal stuff that's happening, fantasy stuff that's happening in this world. And so I kind of wanted more. I think that's my number one complaint for most novellas, is I always want a little bit more like from the world. But yeah, I really enjoyed this story. And this is the first one in a series. So I've been wanting to continue that, but I don't know if it's available, if the second one is available from my library. But Bruce and the Bear was really cute, and I was glad that we chose that. And most people seem to feel the same way. So I gave that one a solid 4 stars. Then I also read Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This is the first book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, which I had heard so much love for. So I listened to this one on audiobook, and I quite enjoyed it. It's definitely, it has to do with vampires, and then there are like these vampire hunters who are not human. They're like turned humans, but like they're not human. They have like abilities. So yeah, I'm enjoying this series. I don't think it's like amazingly well written. It's definitely dated with some 90s/early 2000s references that just make me laugh throughout the whole thing. But I enjoyed it. I felt like the whole time I was like kind of giggling, and I thought, well, that could have been done a little bit better. There was definitely a lot of insta-love in the first book, but when I got to the end of it, I was like, that was a fun time. Like, it wasn't like the best book I'd ever read, but I just really enjoyed the actual experience. And so I ultimately gave Dark Lover 4 stars, and then I went right into the next book. The next book audio was also available through my library. So even though I had planned to read Wolfsong next for the readathon, I just dove right into the second book. So I then read Lover Eternal by J.R. Ward, which is the second book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Again, same world. We are following one of the other vampires in the Brotherhood, and book 2 was Rage and Mary's story, which I thought was interesting because Mary is a human. So I was like, is she able to be, is like turning humans into vampires like a thing in this world? It hadn't come up in the first book. So I was like, is this going to happen? So I felt like that was like a really good source of tension throughout this book. Also, Mary has cancer. Yes, she has cancer, and so that's like another and that's not something that like anybody can solve. So that was another source of tension. And I thought I liked this book better than the first book. Again, it's very similarly written and dated, but also like I enjoyed it and I wanted to keep reading the series. So I ultimately gave Lover Eternal 4 stars. It was like I would say that Dark Lover was like a 3.9 and then Lover Eternal was like a 4.1, and we're just going to kind of like squish them both into 4 stars. So I did start Wolfsong by TJ Klune during the readathon, but it's a hefty, like a bigger book, so I did not finish it within the Love in the Night readathon, but I did then finish it as my next book in November. I'm still kind of debating doing its own individual review on this because, guys, Wolfsong is my favorite book. Favorite book of the month. Quite possibly the favorite book of the year. I mean, so far I'm leaving a little bit of room, this much room, for something I read in December to knock that out of the top spot. But right now, Wolfsong is definitely my favorite read of the year. I found this book to be emotional. It is heartwarming. It is heart-wrenching. I'm not going to give you very much information because like I didn't have that much information going in, and I think that served me really well. It is a male-male paranormal romance. It involves shifters, and they are werewolves in this book. There are other magics, like witches and other magic systems in this book as well. And the only other thing I knew beforehand was that it was like a childhood friends to lovers, which I was like a little concerned about, but it worked amazingly well in this book. So the writing and the characters just really got to me. It has like found family. It has, there's just so much in this book. I would totally recommend. If anything that I've said sounds even vaguely interesting, I think that you'll really like it. I have found that I really, really, really felt like the writing was super strong and really evocative and simple, but like in a goes straight to all your feels kind of way. So I loved Wolfsong. I'm already considering rereading it, and it's only been like not even 3 weeks since I finished it. Top book of the year, 5 stars, 6 stars, whatever. Awesome, amazing, loved Wolfsong. I was like sobbing. I was going to live vlog that as I was reading it, and I was like sobbing. Actually, I did film a quick clip. I'll put that right here. And you can totally hear in my voice that I'm like trying not to cry. So I'll put that here. But yeah. Hi. So I am not even 50% of the way through Wolfsong. And I have ugly cried more than once. So I don't think I'm going to be able to properly vlog about this. Do yourself a favor, read Wolfsong. It is so touching and funny and sad all at the same time. This might be my top read of the year, and like I said, I'm only like 40% of the way through. Oh god, so many feelings. Okay, so yeah, that was me. And I didn't do a full vlog because the whole thing would have been a hot mess. Read Wolfsong. Let's continue with my November wrap up. I then read Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. This is a literary fiction book. I listened to it on audio. It was one of my real life book club's choices. We were meeting virtually. And this book was like fine. I really haven't been super in the mood for literary fiction recently, and this book is just this like long character study of these two families, like, and how they interact. There's mental illness, there's alcoholism, there's like tragedy, there's gun violence, like there's a lot that happens, but also like it's not plot heavy. The whole point is that it's a character study, and it's like how these families interact and how like our two main characters interact with each other. I thought it was perfectly fine. I just was like not super into it. It was like just interesting enough for me to keep listening and not DNF it, and also because I wanted to participate in the book club like virtual meeting part. But if I'd been just reading this on my own, I totally would have just DNF'd it. I would have just been like, yeah, not for me. So ultimately I gave Ask Again Yes only 2.5 stars. It was just like a middle of the road. I think it was perfectly fine and good. It just wasn't for me and wasn't what I was wanting to read at that time. And then the book that I finished right after that was also something that was very different from what I typically read. The next book was The Diva Runs Out of Time by Krista Thomas. This was a buddy read that I did with Nicole from See Nicole Read. I will link our description up in the cards and down in the description box. So you should go check out our chat about it. But The Diva Runs Out of Time is a domestic diva mystery. It's a cozy mystery. It's the first book in this series. And we picked it because it has to do with Thanksgiving. It's set during Thanksgiving. And so I haven't really read that many cozy mystery type books, but basically like Sophie is our main character and she finds a body of a man and she was like just talking to this guy like an hour before. So she's kind of a suspect, but also like they're trying to figure out who done it. And then the next day she finds another body again of a man that she happened to be talking to like an hour before. So the cozy mystery aspect is that there's a ton of people at her house and like they're all suspects and like how do these two murdered people, like what do they have to do with each other and who done it. I thought it was like fine. I didn't feel that it was the like format is very predictable and comfortable. And even and it was like recognizable to me, even having read very few cozy mysteries, but I ultimately did not predict like the actual culprit, or the whodunit. So yeah, I mean, on that score, I think as a cozy mystery, it worked really well. I understand why it has all the ratings. It just wasn't really ultimately what I wanted or something I super enjoyed reading. So I gave The Diva Runs Out of Time 3 stars. And then two left, guys, two left. I then read the third Black Dagger Brotherhood book, which is called Lover Awakened, again by J.R. Ward. I listened to this also on an audiobook, and this one follows Bella and Zadist, who is another one of the brothers. And he is probably like the most damaged out of all of the Brotherhood that we first like meet. I mean, like it's very clear from book one that each one of them has sort of like a thing about them, and it feels like Z's thing is like much more complicated because he'd been like kidnapped as an infant and like held as a slave for hundreds of years, or at least 100 years. So he definitely has some real baggage. But I ultimately really enjoyed this story. I felt like we got a lot of opportunities to see Z's like growth and healing. I felt like it was a little rushed. I also felt like Bella kind of pushed him a little bit when maybe she shouldn't have pushed him. But it dealt with like mental illness, and it dealt with the two people making a connection and like kind of working through things together. And there was like a nice bond. So I felt like it was really good and enjoyable. I felt like the ending did kind of wrap up and was like a little cliche of an ending, but ultimately this has been my favorite of the 3 so far. And so I gave it like a 4.3 stars. So yeah. And then my last book that I managed to finish in November is the second TJ Klune book. I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune for the Page Turner Book Club choice. I read this book on physical. It's out in the living room. I'm not going to go get it. And I really liked it. It is very different in style to Wolfsong. Wolfsong is a adult story with explicit content and swearing as well as sexual content. But The House in the Cerulean Sea, I think, is like a fantasy YA. That's what genre I put it in. And again, the writing really stands out for me. We were kind of saying in our chat that the vibes that we got were sort of Ministry of Magic meets Series of Unfortunate Events, just in the like style and tone. And this book is really adorable. We follow Linus, and he is like a middle-aged man, and he works for a company that is in charge of magical youth because there are kids who have magical abilities. And so this Department of Magical Youth runs a number of like orphanages slash homes slash facilities where these kids can go and live. And so he has to go to inspect one of these places, and then like he finds, you know, like kind of found family and love, and he learns a lot about himself and about the world in the house that is on the Cerulean Sea. I don't understand why it's the house in the Cerulean Sea. I mean, it's on an island, but like, whatever. Anyway, I really liked it. The writing was superb, both this book and in Wolfsong. There were so many quotes that I wanted to like highlight and that I felt like really spoke to me, whether they were evocative, like good turns of phrase, or they were just kind of poignant words. I felt like there were a lot of really good quotes in TJ Klune's writing. His writing pulled on all my heartstrings. I felt like so connected to Linus and connected to all the kids. I definitely recommend The House in the Cerulean Sea. To me, it was essentially a 5-star, maybe not quite a 5-star, maybe more like a 4.8, 4.9, because there was just one or two things about it that I thought could have been improved. But overall, I really, really liked this book as well. So I think TJ Klune is going to be like one of my top new favorite authors, and I definitely want to dive into all of his backlist. So that is it for my November wrap up. I felt like I read a lot in November. I think part of that was the Love in the Night readathon. I finished 4 books, and I also read 3 books in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. So it felt like I was really making progress there, even though I think there are like 17 books or something in that whole series. So I felt like I read a lot, and the page count was a little bit higher than in some of the other previous months. But overall, I'm really happy with the books that I read in November, and I feel like it was a nice mix. I kind of read some variety, even though half of the books were paranormal romance. Everything else was like all different stuff. So yeah, if you read anything that I read this month, if you have your own Love in the Night readathon vlogs or content that I missed, please leave that down in the comments below. If you love TJ Klune, or if you have a recommendation that's similar to something that I've listed in this video, please leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.